Hey, Prime members! Have you heard? You can listen to your favorite podcasts ad-free? Good news! With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free-podcast. That's amazon.com/ad-free-podcast to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Hi, everybody. Sharyl Attkisson here. Welcome to another edition of Full Measure After Hours. Today, the growing battle over the quality and healthfulness of our food and whether the government is limiting Americans' choices through regulation. One focus is the dispute over raw milk. There is a growing national battle over our food. On one side are consumers who claim the government's making it hard to buy food that's safer and more nutritious while force-feeding us a diet that's unhealthy and causing chronic diseases. This, as you know, became a focus in the recent presidential campaign with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., an advocate for all things regarding children's health, better, safer medicine, and so on, when Kennedy joined the Trump campaign with a promise to make America healthy again. We'll have to see what steps are taken, but Kennedy in advance has said that he wants things such as a safer food supply, better choices for our kids when it comes to school lunches, the halt of pharmaceutical advertising on television. Some have suggested that we're now learning processed food is extremely dangerous in many respects, as dangerous, some say, as tobacco, and that it should come with warning labels. I tend to think that some of the companies, rather than have to put warning labels on their food, might go ahead and start changing their ingredients voluntarily because they already produce what's considered safer food without some of the troublesome ingredients in Europe. They could switch to that in the United States. They just haven't been forced to do that. And these other ingredients that they tend to use that are considered more dangerous tend to be more profitable and cheaper, or make it where they can sell foods for more profit by making them last longer with preservatives and so on. In any event, there are a lot of people now who are insisting that things are pretty backwards, that the government is forcing us to eat food that's dangerous while prohibiting us from buying food that is safer or more healthful. Today, we're going to hear in this podcast both views when it comes to one flashpoint in this debate, and that's raw milk versus pasteurized milk. First, the pro-raw milk viewpoint from a farmer who produces raw milk products, cheese and milk and other things. Her name is Sally Morell in Brandywine, Maryland, owner of P.A. Bowen Farmstead. And then after that, you'll be hearing from Sarah Sorsha, who has a different view. She's with the Center for Science and the Public Interest, a food watchdog group, which is against a growing push to put raw milk on more of America's grocery shelves. So first, here's Sally Morell.
So we produce about 6,000 pounds of cheese a year.
Per year?
Per year. I don't know how much milk do we produce, Brian, per year? About 25% of our business is the milk.
About 18,000 gallons.
18,000 gallons of milk, and we do about 50 or 60 pigs per year, probably 2,000 meat chickens, and I don't know how many eggs. Yeah.
Is all of the milk that you sell unpasteurized?
That's correct.
Is that what raw means? Just
That's
unpasteurized?
what raw means, and it's sold as milk for dogs and cats.
But people probably drink it.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's not my business. None of my business.
Can you explain in short form to people who aren't familiar with this controversy what both sides say about raw milk?
Well, the conventional side, the industry says, and the regulators say you have to heat treat milk to make it safe. Our side says when you heat treat milk, you make it very hard to digest. The enzymes that are in the milk for the 100% assimilation of the nutrients. They are destroyed. The milk can become actually very dangerous for some people. We have 20 to 30 deaths from anaphylactic shock to pasteurized milk per year in this country.
Has the government, do you feel, gotten more aggressive about warding people off of raw milk?
Well, recently there's been this big push to tell people that raw milk is dangerous, but we have probably 20 million people drinking raw milk in this country who know that that's not true.
If the government gives, they've sent us some material, the government will give statistics that show a certain number of people get sick and die from the relatively small amount of raw milk we know about or that's documented.
Yeah.
So they do make it sound like there are risks.
Yeah.
Are there risks?
Well, we believe that pasteurized milk is more risky. What they're not telling you is that there's been a lot of illness from pasteurized milk and pasteurized milk products and a few deaths. They say there's been 2 deaths from raw milk since 2000, but there actually haven't been any. They're kind of making those deaths up. One of them was in a family that drank raw milk, but the person who died was a cancer patient who didn't drink raw milk, but they're counting that as a death. So you have to be very careful about the government statistics. Another thing they say is there's more hospitalizations from people who drink raw milk, but the thing is, if they ask you, did you drink raw milk, and you're sick, they send you to the hospital. So they're manufacturing that statistic.
Are you allowed to, just as a free citizen, drink raw milk?
Yes, there's no law anywhere against purchasing, possessing, or consuming raw milk.
Do you drink raw milk?
I do, every day.
How has the bird flu scare factored into all of this?
Raw milk sales have gone up since this started. Some say by 60%, but it certainly hasn't hurt anybody's business.
The government has issued warnings saying now more than ever,
Yes.
do not drink raw milk because they imply you could get bird flu from it.
Yes, yes.
You don't believe that?
No, they're just making that up. They've never found a bird flu virus. The cows that are getting sick, and there is something going on. There are certain herds where they've had a lot of illness and lowered production. But there's so many other things that could cause that. The feed, the noxious gases in the confinement dairies, it could be stray electricity. Maybe they put Wi-Fi in the barns and that could affect the cows. So many things that could cause this illness, but they're not looking at that. They just make the virus the fall guy.
When it comes to the Amish, there have been measures taken against some Amish farmers, and specifically very aggressive measures. And you, it's my understanding, have joined in trying to speak out for them.
Yes.
What is your stake in that, and what are your thoughts?
We just support small farmers everywhere, the small family farm, and part of the campaign against raw milk is really a campaign against small farmers. What's interesting was the one farmer that they raided, and then they had a hearing where I testified, Amos Miller. They did find some things that I didn't consider very sanitary on that farm, but you know what? Nobody got sick. And that just shows you how safe raw milk really is. I'm for producing very clean raw milk, but for centuries people have thrived on milk that we wouldn't think is particularly clean. And that's because there's so many antimicrobial factors in raw milk that make it safe.
What do you think is behind the government's, let me ask you a different way, what do you think is motivating the government to try to stop people from drinking raw milk?
I think it's several things. People are invested in the germ theory, invested in this idea that this pasteurizing we've been doing all these years is a good thing, when in effect it's put thousands and thousands of dairy farms out of business. But I also think it's the industry. So they are paying farmers about $1.50 a gallon for their milk. It's the same price they got in World War II. Whereas a farmer doing raw milk gets anywhere from $5 to $25 a gallon. And the industry doesn't want to compete with this. If they had to pay their farmers more, the whole system would not work.
So do you believe industry lobbying is in part behind the government coming up with this?
Absolutely. I don't think anyone would be surprised to hear that.
In the bigger picture, when we look at our food supply beyond milk, it seems to me the government tolerates and in some cases requires toxic things to be put in the food as it's grown or processed.
You know, we've become more and more concentrated in the food industry, more mechanized, more industrial, and people are getting sicker and sicker. The future is what we're doing. The future is small, grass-based farms, and if you talk to anybody in the Department of Agriculture, they'll say, oh, we'll all starve if we do that. But that's how people lived for thousands of years. That's how we fed people in World War I and World War II with thousands of small farms. What you get is actually abundance when you spread things out. And you get food security because your food's right there.
Critics might say, well, centuries ago we fed people water that wasn't purified or clean, and why not do that now? Well, the reason is we can make water safer, and presumably that has saved lives. Couldn't the same argument be applied with milk?
Actually, we have made water safer. We've made our cities safer. We have sewers now. We have refrigeration. And we have much, much better living conditions than we used to have. But the 50% death rate among children in New York City in the 1800s, it was blamed on the milk. But there was manure, piled high in the streets and no sewage, no sanitation. That's the culprit. And that once that was cleaned up, the death rate went down and people lived longer. The pasteurization was not necessary.
A couple more questions. What do you think is the key to keeping your milk safe?
Well, we test it every day for coliform.
What is coliform?
Coliform bacteria levels. Usually we get 0. That's a very good way to test if we're doing things right on the farm.
Would that show bird flu?
How do you show bird flu?
I don't know. Yes, you test for the
they're
virus.
using a PCR test that's bogus. It doesn't show anything. They can set it at 30 cycles and you get a negative, and 40 cycles you get a positive. What kind of test is that? I mean, they should be, I don't know.
Go ahead with your answer. So you test it every day?
We test for coliform every day. We are extremely clean. We clean the udders, we clean the cows. Then we immediately chill down and keep things very cold. And that's what's required to produce good, safe milk.
What is the federal and what is the state law regarding raw milk right now and human consumption?
Okay, the Constitution says anything not put in the Constitution specifically is regulated by the states. So milk production is regulated by the states, and whether you can sell raw milk or not is dependent on state law.
And what do they say here in Maryland?
Okay, so Maryland, my husband and I tried to get them to open up raw milk for human consumption years ago, and they turned us down.
So in Maryland, you cannot sell raw milk for the purpose of human consumption.
But then about 8 years ago, we got the pet license, and now there's probably 20 or 30 dairies doing the pet milk.
Pet milk.
Pet milk.
Okay.
Other states, it's different. In 13 states, you can go into a store and buy raw milk. That's the goal. That's our goal. We want to see raw milk in stores all over the country. And little by little, we're working to liberalize these laws in the various states. We just got Delaware. There used to be 200-300 dairy farms in Delaware. Now there's only 10. And that was the argument they used in the legislature. We're not going to have any dairy at all in Delaware unless we open it up to raw milk.
For people who are trying to navigate this controversy and they don't have all the information, what is your advice to them?
Go to our website, realmilk.com. There are a lot of articles there on the health benefits and the safety of raw milk, and we have a map showing what the laws are in every state. And a map where you can find it. Put in your zip code, you can find it. That map, Milk Finder map, gets 100,000 new visits per month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or takeaways on this?
This is the future. Raw milk is the future. It will mean that we have healthier children, healthier farms, healthier rural economy.
One more question. I'm sorry, I thought of one. When you talk about the health benefits, can you be specific? You did touch on this,
Yes.
but what it can do to a child that's beneficial in your view?
Yes, well, In animal studies, when they compare animals fed on raw milk versus pasteurized milk, the animals on raw milk have denser bones, better teeth. They don't have calcium in the soft tissues. It's all put in the hard tissues where it belongs. The animals are less stressed. And then in human studies, and these were done in Europe in the last couple of decades, you have less asthma, less respiratory disease, and less fewer allergies in children brought up on raw milk.
What is the idea, that there's something in the milk that stimulates the immune system in a good way, or do we know?
We are discovering new things in milk every month. First of all, milk has all the vitamins and minerals that the child needs to grow. It is the food in nature for the growth and development of mammals. And it has special enzymes to ensure 100% assimilation. No other food is like that. Then it has substances that build the immune system. It has everything that's in your blood except raw blood cells that creates the immune system, strengthens the gut wall, kills pathogens. I mean, it's just an amazing substance. And when you tinker with it, it's the one food that you really cannot heat. Many other foods we can cook or ferment or whatever, and of course we can ferment milk too. But you don't have to do anything to it to make it safe, and of course it's extremely nutritious.
You know that feeling when your favorite brand really gets you? Deliver that feeling to your customers every time. Memorable moments like these are key to building your business and your brand. Klaviyo turns your customer data into real-time connections across AI-powered email, SMS, and more, making every moment count, so you can continue to build smarter, more meaningful relationships with your customers. Build smarter digital relationships with your customers and make every moment count with Klaviyo. Learn more at klaviyo.com/BFCM.
Forget one-size-fits-all diets. With Noom, you get a personalized weight loss plan that's tailored to your lifestyle. Have cravings? Food FOMO? Noom can help you lose weight while still enjoying your favorite foods. Noom's users love the flexible approach, blending psychology and biology to help you lose weight in a way that's sustainable for you. Plus, you can rest assured Noom's approach is grounded in science. They've published more than 30 peer-reviewed scientific articles describing their methods and effectiveness. Stay focused on what's important to you with Noom's psychology and biology-based approach. Sign up for your trial today at Noom.com.
I think it's a really interesting moral question about how we operate as a society and how we balance harm to individuals that can be really severe and life-changing versus giving a large group of people the ability to buy products they prefer.
Interesting. So why is this an issue today, the notion of raw milk and its safety?
Yeah, I would say we made a lot of progress in the last century on public health, and pasteurized milk really was a huge victory in terms of reducing foodborne illness. We don't have a lot of magic bullets in food safety, but pasteurization is one of them. It's something that doesn't really impact the nutritional value of the product, but it can make milk a lot safer. And it's become an issue recently because a number of states are passing laws that open up the market for retail sales of raw milk. It's often possible to buy raw milk directly from the farm, which really limits the scope of the practice and helps ensure that people really need to be educated before they make the purchase. Well, it doesn't ensure they're educated, but it provides them more opportunity to be educated. But when we're talking about putting it on grocery store shelves, you have consumers who may have no experience with the product being exposed to that risk. And we're going to see more illness, more hospitalization, and potentially more deaths as a result of these policies.
What's potentially in the raw milk and why?
So milk in its raw state contains bacteria that can be harmful. So we have pathogenic E. coli, the same E. coli that caused the Jack in the Box outbreak. It's present in ground beef. That can be found in raw milk. Salmonella, Campylobacter, Brucella.
Is that because our farms dirtier than they were 100 years ago, or were there always a lot of problems with raw milk?
There were always a lot of problems with raw milk. I would say farms have probably gotten cleaner, but those problems haven't resolved. These bacteria are invisible. They can live on healthy animals, and there's no safety practice that can really eliminate the risk other than pasteurization.
And there's no test that can be made of the raw milk once it's put into a container to see if it has these things in it?
You generally can't test your way out of a food safety problem. You can use tests to try to verify that the milk is as clean as it can be, but a negative test in one batch of milk won't guarantee that bacteria aren't present in another batch or even that batch. The test could miss the bacteria.
Why do you think this is seems to be becoming a bigger issue the past decade?
I think
I know people that have told me that they can only tolerate raw milk for some reason. I don't know if it's they claim they and their families have allergies or something. I don't know what the pasteurization has to do with that, but
yeah, I would say there has been a social movement to expand the sale of raw milk, and it's driven by both the farms that produce the raw milk and consumers who see it as a healthier product because they feel that it's less likely to cause intolerance or trigger intolerance, and because they feel that it's higher in nutrients. A lot of the claims around raw milk haven't really been backed up by strong science, but certainly there are both customers and sellers of raw milk who are firm believers in its value. And because the people who will be the most hurt by raw milk aren't really known yet, it can be hard for them to weigh in these legislative debates. And it's impossible for someone who is going to be harmed in the future to weigh in. And so oftentimes the public health voice is being drowned out by the proponents who want to see its sale.
if properly warned, does your organization feel like people have the right to choose to buy unpasteurized or raw milk?
Well, I think one of the challenges is it can be really hard for a customer to understand what that impact is of having that foodborne illness, because when you see kids who are hospitalized for E. coli, it's just such an extreme circumstance for the child and the family. We have kids that could be on dialysis for weeks, really family not knowing whether they're going to live through the experience, and then having really long-term complications, brain damage, organ transplant. And so properly warning someone about that risk can be really challenging. And what we've seen is that even consumers who do their research, that, when then experience, so we've seen families who have done their research, have tried to find a healthy farm, have gone to visit the site, seen it's clean, seen the test results, and they still get sick. And they still have kids who are facing lifetime of organ damage as a result of that. So I think it would be hard to think of a warning that would really provide that information. And then another challenge is we have children who are being fed the raw milk who aren't able to make that informed choice for themselves. It's someone else making it for them. And I think that makes the sort of informed choice problem a little more complicated.
Well, like with vaccines or any medicine we give them as well.
That's right.
Do we have any idea how many people are getting sick from raw milk?
Yeah, the CDC conducted a study, and they looked at, for example, outbreaks that happened in a 5-year period, and they found that there were 75 outbreaks in 5 years from raw milk. A lot of those were small because the distribution tends to be local, and so thankfully that limits the scope of the illnesses. When they looked at sort of the amount of raw milk that's being sold versus pasteurized, and they compared that to the outbreak rate, they found that raw milk is 150 times more likely to cause an outbreak than pasteurized milk. So there's certainly a potential to have more illness if the sale is expanded.
Pasteurized milk can be problematic as well, just not as often, you're saying.
Yeah, with pasteurized milk, there can be contamination after the pasteurization occurs. And so you could still have issues from that, but the scope and scale is really far reduced by the pasteurization process.
Okay, on playing sort of I don't know if this is devil's advocate, but so I got this today.
Yeah.
I get these every day. CDC warns of salmonella infections linked to contaminated basil at Trader Joe's. Mm-hmm. I mean, every day there's an E. coli salmonella outbreak, some of them quite large, with lettuce and food and meat. What's the difference between they're not trying to stop sale of basil or meat in general?
I would say generally when we have some safety step we can take with a product that can make it much, much safer, we want to take that step. So, for example, we have car accidents, but we don't sell cars that don't have seat belts or anti-lock brakes because we know it saves lives. And we shouldn't sell raw milk at retail for the same reason, because we know we can dramatically reduce the risk through a really simple step that doesn't impact the nutritional value of that product. So, I think we have some sensible laws in place to ensure that consumers who are seeking out these products at least are having to go through that effort of informing themselves, and expanding the sales so that it's just sitting there on the grocery store shelf is really inviting people to point a loaded gun at themselves.
So it sounds like you guys are not fighting or protesting the individual farms that are selling direct to consumers at this stage. You're more concerned or most concerned about an expansion where this milk would be in stores?
I think, states have existing policies in place around allowing access on farms. And CSPI is not actually engaged actively on lobbying on this issue, I'll say. I don't think there's been a big effort to unwind those laws. I think the real question now is whether it's going to be expanded on a broader scale to retail. And I think, you can't point to any one person and say, if you drink this product, you're going to get sick. But you do know that if you're talking about expanding it to a whole state, there are people who are going to get sick who wouldn't have gotten sick otherwise. There's going to be people who are hospitalized and have to deal with chronic health conditions. And if we can spare that, and I would say also that the odds are that some of those people are going to be kids. And if we can prevent that, why wouldn't we?
This is the topic of my cover story on Full Measure on Sunday, November 24th. To find out how to watch, you can go to SharylAttkisson.com, click the Full Measure tab for a list of stations and times. If you happen to be listening to this after November 24th, no problem. You can watch replays anytime at fullmeasure.news online. And by the way, you can even watch there live at about 9:35 a.m. Eastern Time Sundays. We feed the program right after it starts airing on TV stations around the country. That's at fullmeasure.news on Sundays. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast and that you will leave us a great review and share the news with your friends. Check out my other podcast, the Sharyl Attkisson podcast, as well as my bestseller, which is right in line with these topics we've been discussing. It's called Follow the Science, How Big Pharma Misleads, Obscures, and Prevails. Read some of the 5-star reviews on Amazon to find out why. This is a valuable book with all kinds of good information for you and also for someone you care about. It makes a great holiday gift. Not only does it explain why, as we've spent record amounts on healthcare, we've grown sicker and sicker with chronic disorders, but it also has hints on how to regain control of your health in a highly manipulated environment when it comes to scientific information. Do your own research, make up your own mind. Think for yourself.